Welcome back, everybody, to another episode of the DFS Army Killshot podcast. I'm Kyle Marley. With me this week is Dan Tom from the Protect Your Neck podcast, and we're going to break down this UFC 280 card for you guys today. Dan and I go way back on Twitter, and he has some of the best breakdowns in the game, so I'm excited to have him on the show today and talk about this card. How you doing today, Dan, and how you feeling about this pay-per-view?
Doing good, man. I am. It's good to be here and talking to, someone who I respect, who really just does the thing that I don't do, to be honest, which is the fantasy I kind of lack on. But where we kind of come together on, my man, is this MMA game and kind of breaking it down for those who like to game it any which way, because let's be honest, we like to play and dabble in a bunch of different things. So I'm happy to be here talking to you, especially about this card. I mean, if you can't tell how excited we are, both me and Big Marley have wood. I'm talking about our backgrounds, of course. If you look, I mean, we are just ready to go here from the head to toe on set.
Full wood, man. I am pumped. Let's get into it, man. We got, not one of my favorite fights to start it off, but I think it's an interesting one for DraftKings at least. We got Rosa coming in as a big favorite, minus 305 against Lena Landsberg, plus 255. And I am on the Rosa side of this one. I actually bet Rosa at minus 240 earlier in the week. And I think it's getting closer to where it should be. I think there's a little bit of value still left, but maybe she's a parlay piece at this point. But I like Rosa a good bit against a 40-year-old Landsberg. I just think Rosa's better everywhere, especially offensively. The only way I can really visualize her losing this fight would be her getting taken down and having trouble getting up and just spending too much time on her back and losing minutes that way. And Landsberg taking the rounds, but I just think Rosa's better at doing that, and I think she has an even bigger edge striking. So if she can stuff takedowns, I think it's a clear win for her. And on DraftKings, I think she's playable as well because she has put up some big scores in the past. And I'm not too interested in the Landsberg side, to be honest with you, but maybe you could change my mind on this one. How you seeing this fight going down? And you like Rosa also?
I think there's a bit of that PTSD that sometimes happens, and I was kind of hoping a little more of it happened. And I think we'll see that correction. I think you got in, when, in hindsight is 2020 at the end of the week, you will look at the number. Hopefully the result will match, of course. That's the goal here. But I think you got in at that right time because sometimes there's that PTSD we have, right? And with Landsberg, you remember that that big upset with was it Chesson, and whereas Carol Rosa, I've been high on her too. I'm still high on her in this spot. Spoiler alert, I'm not letting it get to me. But you could grade her harshly for the McMahon spot, or look at it that McMahon's kind of always had the skills, and with these women's divisions, being older isn't exactly a death sentence, right? If they're not exactly to where the men are. Now, I don't mean that as a disrespectful comp. As any disrespect there. I'm just saying sometimes we can see much more success from the older women. So that could play here by definition for Landsberg. But I didn't like what I saw in her comeback fight as far as that after that 2-year layoff. So give me Carol Rosa all day. I don't blame anybody for using her as a parlay piece.
Yeah, and on DraftKings, I'd say if I'm making 150 lineups, I'm not going to X out Landsberg because if she does go out there and have success with the grappling and wins the fight that way, I think she probably scores well enough where maybe she can compete for the optimal lineup. But she only scored like 68 points against that fight, against Chieson in that fight, and that's the game plan she would need to have here. So I would rather just target higher ceilings personally, and I'm not going to be using any Landsberg with my hand-built lineups, my 20 or less hand-built lineups. I'm just not going to be touching her. It's going to be Rosa or pass for me in all formats. And I think she goes out there and makes it look fairly easy, takes it 30-27.
Nice, nice.
Next one on the card, we have young prospect, Muhammad Makayev. Now he's up to a minus 1150 against Malcolm Gordon, plus 750. It looks like a squash match to me. What do you think of this one, Dan?
Man, I like Malcolm Gordon. He's worked with some people I like. He seems like a kind of a guy I'd root for. But let's be honest. I'm not surprised to see these odds. I don't also blame anybody. I know it's probably going to be just as expensive, of course, the price tag on Makayev. But again, it's not even so much buying into his hype as looking at the opponent. And Malcolm Gordon, whether you like him or not, folks, he is a do or die fighter. So if you're looking for potential finish potential for your points, or for any prop plays, depending on how how you like the game out there, right? Yeah, I don't blame anybody tying that in. You're just going to have to pay a hefty price for Makayev on all counts, whether you're talking about money lines, props, or, fantasy roster prices. I imagine they're all up there.
Yeah, he is the most expensive guy on DraftKings this week at 9,600. And that is usually a score that is priced out of the optimal lineup. But man, I'm not going to let that keep me away from him. I think that he has one of the highest ceilings on the card just because of his grappling and wrestling ability. He had 12 takedowns in his last fight, as many takedowns as the other guy had strikes. And maybe it's not exciting for people to watch, but on DraftKings, that scores well. He scored 120 DraftKings points, and he was on the optimal lineup. And he has that same path to victory in this one if he wants to go out there and wrestle for 3 full rounds. I also think he could test Gordon's weak chin, get a knockout at any point here. Even though he's not known as a striker on the regional scene, I thought his striking looked pretty good. I think he's a better striker than Gordon here. And I also think he's in play for the submission in any round. And he can go out there and wrestle hard for a full 15 minutes on DraftKings. That's what we like to see. So I'm just going to be on the, if I can afford them, I like them. I'll probably lock them into cash games if I play cash this week. But in the tournaments, if he's going to be 50% owned, I think we can get away from that. Look to some other lower owned fighters. But if I got, 9,600 for my last spot, I'm definitely throwing him in there. And I would say if price doesn't matter, he'd be my favorite play on the board.
I hear you, and playing for that finish potential. I will say one thing, though, with Gordon's chin, the one place he does have a chance to win, Gordon, of course, Brazilian Jiu-Jitsu black belt, not bad off his back and create some scrambles. He can also get finished down there, too. Obviously, Makayev skilled enough to compete there, but you wonder, maybe this is the fight where with the big cage and that stylistic opponent, does he try to test his striking? Even if he does go with that approach, I still pick him by club and sub, which means he's probably going to sneak at least one takedown or two in there on a hurt Gordon to maybe finish the job.
Yeah, that's a good point, actually. If he's going to go out there and test his striking, that's not good for us on DraftKings at 9,600. Right. At that point, he's going to be knockout or bust if we're relying on him to just get significant striking points along the way. So that is a reason to fade him. If you think that this is a good chance for him to go out there and show his striking, maybe he still gets the win, but he's just not going to have that 120, 130 point ceiling that we would like to see from him. So that's a good reason to get away from him if you can see that happening here, because he will be highly owned. All right, next one on the card, we got striker versus striker. Armen Petrosian, -200 against AJ Dobson, +170. I would say Petrosian is the more technical, higher volume striker, better overall striker through the course of 3 rounds. But Dobson is a scary striker, especially early in fights. This guy's going out there trying to knock his opponent's head off. And I think he's live to do that here. But how are you seeing this one going down? These are the type of fights I like to listen to you on, because you got those in-depth breakdowns where I don't really look at it that in-depth, and I usually learn something when I listen to you.
I really appreciate that, man. And I'll just say right off the bat, I was actually going to compliment your analysis to turn it around, not to turn it into a kissing each other's butts party or anything. But I actually like that you mentioned that, because I think that the surface level take here, or just off kind of looking at it without digging in, and there's still a couple matches that I want to dig in on this one before I make a definitive play or not play, by the way. But my guy Big Marley said something really important, which is the knockout potential, which I think can be overlooked. Now, if you're looking at the records, you'll see that AJ Dobson, he gets finishes. That's no surprise. But what we've seen in the UFC, especially when you get to the higher level, and he's training with good wrestlers. I believe he's had like Mark Coleman, OGs in his corner. Is that you'll see fights get extended a bit more. And in those, if he doesn't get the finish, he does seem like a guy who will wrestle. And in that, I still, the loss to Malkoun, it doesn't look as bad, I believe, now in hindsight, because Malkoun has kind of proved his mettle, right? Proved a lot of us wrong to whatever degree, not saying we all discounted him like crazy, but the guy proved his worth. So I don't get too crazy with that. And I like Petrosian's urgency. I really do like his get-up urgency. He's not facing a lockdown grappler who's been training with Damian Maia since he was a teenager, and black belt and judo black belt, by the way, in Kyle Borralho, in the small cage. This is the bigger cage. So I believe, like Big Marley said, more of the threat, more of the path to victory is actually a little more of what we saw AJ Dobson early in his career, the early finish. If that's what you're looking for, if you're playing the dog here, that's a potential angle. If you're looking for extra points or a prop angle, depending on how you game, That being said, I'm on the favorite side here. I'm on Petrosian. I like that he's been getting his camps at American Top Team. I got to imagine his urgency and counter wrestling is only going to be improved. But speaking of his earlier fights, we have seen him stopped early too. So again, that little tidbit that Big Marley said, you have to account for that in your analysis.
Yeah, I'm fine with picking the favorite here. I do think a 15-minute fight would favor him. He's more likely to win that. I do think Dobson's more likely, if there's any wrestling in this fight, I think it would be more likely him. But I don't expect that to be part of his game plan. Maybe if he gets cracked or something, he looks to get a takedown to kind of recover or something like that.
Mm-hmm.
But I think what puts Dobson more so in play for me, he's my preferred DraftKings play here because he has a 100-point upside with his first-round knockout potential.
Mm-hmm.
That's 100 points. But with Petrosian, if he's going to go out there, win 3 rounds with the striking, not look to do any wrestling or grappling, we saw him beat Gregory Rodriguez, who I'm very high on, but he only scored 81 points in that fight. And now we got him priced up at 9,100. So for me, Petrosian will mostly be a fade this week just because of that price tag. It's just too high for me when I would rather target these people priced around him. And then Dobson, on the other hand, he is, the lowest guy I'm really interested in because if he goes out there and gets a first-round knockout at $7,100, he's on the optimal lineup. So I'm just targeting ceilings this week, trying to hit that $200,000 prize. Hopefully it's my lottery shot week, but Dobson is my preferred play in this one, and I'll just pick him to go out there and get that first-round knockout. We have seen Petrosian knocked out cold in the first round before against a lesser-level striker, in my opinion, and Dobson is a very scary striker early in the fight. So I'm just going to shoot for that ceiling and pick Dobson to get that knockout.
I'll be happy for you and any dog players because that matches my betting analysis as far as it being more of a dog or pass type fight, even though I'm picking Petrosian. Not interested in putting my money there for the reasons you stated. He'll definitely pay off his price if he hits in the way as expected. So best of luck.
Thank you. All right, next one on the card. We have, one I'm not really sure about. We got Abubakar Nurmagomedov, -165 against Omar Gaziev. Plus 140. And before Omar Gaziev's UFC debut, we just saw him go out there and look like he was a grappling machine, take people down with ease, do what he wants basically on top. And then he comes in his UFC debut and he gets dominated on the ground by Kyle Borralho, who's later on this card. And that really just put a bad taste in my mouth. Like, is this guy really good? Was he just beating bums? Which I was worried about going into that debut. But I picked him to go out there and win by grappling, and then just seeing how bad he looked, I have a problem picking him over really anybody. And then with Nurmagomedov, I just think he does have a big striking edge in this fight. I thought he looked really good with his in and out movement against Jared Gooden. He's got some power. He got a takedown in that fight. His last name's Nurmagomedov. Maybe he's even the better wrestler. I don't know. But I just don't know what I'm going to do with this fight. It's one where I'm really okay with either side. It'd be more for my 6th spot in my lineup based on who fits. If I need the underdog, I'm fine with him. If I need the favorite, I'm fine with him. And if I have to get away from this fight, I'm fine with that as well. But do you have a preferred play in this one? Who you like in here?
I don't have a preferred play yet, but I can tell you that this one interests me just because of the line. I figured both from casual to hardcore perspective, the Nurmagomedov line would draw some more action, both in the opener, which it opened low, and in the market play, which if it's played anyway, it's actually had a bit money come in on Omar Gaziev. I'm sorry for brutalizing that name there, but Gaziev reminds me of another guy we saw in the UFC. I believe it was Gazimurov Antigulov. Or Shamil Gamzatov, or as I like to say, Shamzatov, because you got to spot the fake ones. Okay. Not everybody with the OV is good. Just because they're Russian doesn't mean they're good. I know I do it. We all do it. It's good. There's a good natured stereotyping that we do while breaking down these fights. That's fine, folks. All I'm saying is that you got to be careful with the Russians. Sometimes they're not, don't get me wrong. If you want to put your blindfold on and throw darts at Russians, you're going to do well. You're going to win more than you're going to lose. I'm not saying that, but what I am saying is I don't trust Gaziev. That's why I took Borralho when they fought, and I'll take Nurmagomedov here. I know he had the slip up to David Zawada, which is probably, his least, sexy loss. Because if you look at Pavel Kush, he also lost by first round submission. He's a real surprise, opportunistic guy. Pavel Kush, who I did some study for before he entered the PFL, some scouting for. And then further down the line, he fought Anton Chigurh from No Country for Old Men. That's Magomed Mustafayev, who was supposed to be on this card, I believe. And that was a doctor stoppage, even at that. I mean, getting knocked out by that guy in round one is what you're supposed to do. It was a doctor stoppage. So, again, kind of forgivable on the Abubakar Nurmagomedov side. And I scouted a bit of him before, too, a bit one-dimensional from 2019 pre. So I'm going to refresh myself from 2019 to now before I make a decision. But off my memory of his recent fights, that Jared Gooden win, I think it's good enough to get the win here. Do I want to play it? It's getting close to a playable line if you like it, but I think there's much better spots on this card, to be honest. But the pick is the favorite, Abubakar.
I would agree. That's who I picked as well. I just think that if he's able to stuff takedowns, it's his win. I think he has a big edge on the feet, which is probably his game plan, is just to keep it on the feet. But at the same time, I think, as bad as Gaziev looked on the ground last time, it wouldn't shock me to see Nurmagomedov land a couple takedowns of his own here. But I do think if that's not his game plan, we're really shooting for the knockout on DraftKings with him priced as a favorite, which I think is in play. I'm not against Nurmagomedov. On the other end, if Omar Gaziev wins, it's very likely to be takedown heavy, lots of top control time, and he probably would score well. It's just that I'm not picking him to win. So that's why I don't know what I'm going to do with this fight yet. My pick is Nurmagomedov. I'll just let the domination station here control my lineup. So I'll put the players in that I like. I'll X out the players that I don't like. And I'll just see what combinations it spits out for me. But I'm going to probably limit this one to, I don't want either guy in more than a quarter of my lineup, something like that. But give me Nurmagomedov. I'm just more impressed with him.
Nice. I like that domination station.
Domination station optimizer. Yeah, man. We got all sports with this thing too. It's been crushing this year. So if you haven't signed up yet, go over to dfsarmy.com. Use promo code Sleeveless. That'll save you 10% every month. And we already have a Millionaire Maker winner this year in NFL. Plus, we got NBA starting. Last night, got another bigger slate tonight. So go on over, sign up, use that domination station, and start dominating. All right, next one on the card, we have Zubaira Tukhugov minus 155 against Lucas Almeida plus 135. This one was tough for me. I'm picking Tukhugov to win, but I think the lines are just a little bit wide, which I usually just lean to the underdog in. But I just think he has more paths to victory with his wrestling upside. He's fighting with all his boys on this card here in Abu Dhabi. So I ended up picking Tukhugov, but my preferred play on DraftKings is going to be Almeida here. I just think he has the higher ceiling if we don't get an early knockout from either side, and he is the underdog. But how are you seeing this fight going down? Maybe you can change my mind here and talk me into the underdog.
This was interesting. At first, I was looking at Tukhugov and was going to wonder if you were too for this Lucas Almeida. But then I realized he wasn't the Contender Series guy who always gives up guillotines, which would have translated into some point-scoring takedowns. Of course, Tukhugov will still probably want those takedowns in this matchup. Obviously, Lucas Almeida loves to strike, got some good Muay Thai. I slept on him last time where I didn't play Trezano. I picked Trezano, but it was just one of those feelings where I'm like, this is the time where Trezano's getting stopped, I think. And I wish I listened to that inkling a little harder because it did. And Lucas Almeida obviously impressed. He opened as the favorite. So I'm curious how those prices translate on your end for the fantasy prices, Big Marley. Because again, does it go with the line movement in those cases, or what are you seeing for the price tag? Because we had a line flip on this one here.
Yeah, I don't think they did salaries early enough to get that on DraftKings. So we have Tukhugov 8,300, still the slight favorite on Almeida 7,900. But with Tukhugov, well, what I liked in his last fight, he basically doubled his output from all his previous fights. He landed like 76 significant strikes, which is good to see that upped volume. But it's really the wrestling and the explosiveness and power that I'm impressed with by him. And that's, that usually leads well. Like if you got explosive power, you get the first round knockout. That's when he does score well. But when he goes out there and wrestles, he's just not doing enough on the ground. He's not getting enough strikes on the ground. He's not getting enough takedowns to where he's scoring very high. So I just don't know that he can get, more than 10x this $8,300 price tag unless he's getting an early knockout. And we did see Almeida get dropped in the first round of that Trezano fight. And I do think Tukhugov would have finished that if he drops him like that. I think that would be dangerous. He's probably going out. But if he doesn't drop him and he leans back on the takedowns, lands 3 takedowns throughout the fight, there's just other guys on this card that I'd like to target. And then with Almeida, I think he is the better overall striker, the faster striker, the guy who can go hard for 15 minutes on the feet, land at a high volume, which I don't think Tukhugov can keep up with. I would just rather take my shot on the underdog because there's a lot less underdogs on this card that I want to target. So I just think he's in play for me. And if I'm making 150, I'll let Tukhugov get in some lineups, but he's not going to be in, the main lineups that I focus on this week, just because I'd rather target all these favorites that I like more, that I think have higher ceilings and more ways to get to that higher ceiling. So picking Tukhugov to win, but my preferred DraftKings play is going to be Almeida.
I hear you there. Absolutely. I'm going to reserve my right for a pick on this one, not to do this to y'all, but this is what I do think, though. I'll give you one real detailed thing to watch out for and where I ultimately think this fight's going. I actually put this kind of in the category as the Gaziev Nurmagomedov fight, where ultimately I'm picking this thing and I'm probably leaning toward the favorite, or at least in this case, the newly installed favorite, Tukhugov, to edge out a greasy decision. And I'm not trying to play into those, which kind of does play into that narrative that they're the favorite guys in Abu Dhabi. I'm not trying to get all tinfoil hat on you guys. There are going to be some good quality judges like the Ben Cartilages of the world out there. I'm just saying, I think it's going to be a greasy decision, right? But here's the part that scares me if you're trying to play that angle, or if maybe you're trying to, get some extra points there, is that both these guys are really good with their left hand. Tukhugov's got a really hard left hook. Big Marley, he noted that Almeida can be hurt, and of course Tukhugov can be hurt too. And when you got two guys trading lefts like that, I mean, we just had the Carlos Condit Dan Hardy flashback not too long ago in a fight. So part of me almost sees that with this fight too, like it has the potential at ending anytime. So it's kind of scaring me away. So I apologize for the seesaw take. But I'll probably be leaning toward the favorite. But you guys are more than justified to take the dog and not explain to anybody when you got a line flip like that, when Almeida opened as the favorite and you can now get him at plus money. Very dangerous fighter.
Yeah, and I also think this is a fight that we don't have to target. We have minus 150, fight goes to a decision. And I think that if it goes to a decision, it might not matter who wins. They might not have enough points to make it to the optimal lineup. So if you're looking for fights to just fade, if you're making 5 or less lineups, I think this could be a good one. And, unless you need that underdog salary, I think this is a decent fight to possibly fade. Because we have another better one to target, I think, right here with Nikita Krylov, minus 175 against Volkan Oezdemir, plus 150. Fight doesn't go to a decision, minus 225. That's more what we want to see when we're targeting these tournaments, these GPP fights. Both of these guys have knockout power. Could happen in the first round. Lock them up for 100-plus points. Put them on the optimal lineup here. But I'm picking Krylov because I think the striking is somewhat close. But he has the grappling edge. He's got the takedowns. He's got the grappling. He's got the ground and pound. I just think he has more ways to win this fight. And Oezdemir, his real ceiling is just a knockout. I don't think he can score well if he doesn't go out there and get a knockout, where I think Krylov can score well multiple different ways. So he's going to be my pick here. But how you seeing this one?
I agree. I think that it's funny from a betting perspective. I probably won't want anything to do with this fight. I like the favorite Krylov here. But from the fantasy perspective, I really like how my analysis actually plays right into what you're saying too. So we're on the same page here. Krylov has incorporated a lot of takedowns, really worked on his wrestling and his pacing. He used to be a do or die striking, and then when he would grapple, it was submissions to his detriment off his back. For those of us watching him back in the day, right, the Soa Paleli days when he was still trying to fight at heavyweight. But since then, maybe getting on a different vitamin regime over in his FNG days in Russia, he's working on his strength and conditioning. This guy is the more dependable, is the more dependable guy down the stretch, whereas Oezdemir can tire and he still can make suspect decisions. It's good that he's coming off the Paul Craig camp because it means he's been practicing his takedown. So he's going to have a nice flow and a momentum for Oezdemir going into this camp stylistically. But we even saw some, real questionable decisions where if Paul Craig himself didn't make questionable decisions, perhaps he could have stole that fight away in certain spots because of Oezdemir's kind of, fight IQ, I guess to say. So give me Krylov here. I'm not rushing to the betting window, but when you think about those takedowns, man, I don't blame you if you're trying to find some room on your roster.
Yeah, and he's plus 120 inside the distance. That's a pretty solid number. If he does win inside the distance, he's got a good chance at scoring well. So I will be getting exposure to Krylov. I'm okay with Oezdemir with my 150, but he won't be a guy that I'm really targeting heavily with my hand builds. All right, next one on the card, we have Kyle Borralho minus 195 against Muradov plus 165. And I've been hearing a lot of this is a pure striker versus grappler matchup. And I don't know that that's the case. I think if it was just a striking matchup, it would be a pretty good fight. I think Borralho has good striking. He's very explosive, got power in his kicks and in his punches. But it is basically purely a striker on the Muradov side. And Borralho has a clear path to victory, a much safer path to victory if he wants to go out there and grapple. So I do understand, that breakdown, but I just don't think he's a grappler only. I think Borralho has multiple ways to win this fight. And he's also got multiple ways to score well because he could go out there, look to grapple, which would score well. And he could go out there and get a knockout, which could score well. And he's also alive for the submission. But with Muradov, we do have him priced really low, which is solid. But if he goes out there and wins a striking-based decision, he still might not even 10x. So it's more so the knockout that has him getting any chance at 100 plus here. I'm picking Borralho in this one, but how do you see it going down?
Yeah, that's interesting because for me, I don't see it as Borralho, he's a better grappler, obviously. So I see the grappler versus striker. But if you watch his tape, he doesn't feel the need to sell out for grappling, which actually worries me as somebody picking him here. And especially if you're depending on him to get a submission or score points in that regard, right, with the grappling, because he is a very karate style where he's really happy to kind of fence and outfight and counter. And I love that. It's kind of more what I naturally came from and do. So I get it. But as far as aggression route, you want pressure, especially as a grappler. You want pressure. You want a style that's really going to connect to that grappling. Now, when clinches happen, he's got the judo, and a lot of his takedowns come from the clinch. So that's fine, especially when you're in the small cage. You're going to get more of those clinches. We are not in the small cage. We're in the big cage, which does fit Muradov's style. He likes to kind of, outfight as well. So we honestly could get another greasy spot. You might want to avoid where we get a fencing match and, it comes down to the judges and you might not like the scorecard that gets rendered. So that is a worry for me. Muradov, you're already getting plus money if you want to play him. I imagine you can, 10x that by decision because I feel like that's his way to win. But I am going to pick Kyle Borralho. He is young, getting better every time we see him. He is the more active of the two. And if you look at the one dedicated southpaw he did fight Muradov was Gerald Mearshart, who I love, and has really proved his striking mettle in his last time out for his deniers. But again, 0-1 against official UFC level southpaws. Borralho, I wouldn't say he's a better striker than Mearshart, but he is more younger, more athletic. So I think he can get it done either way. I have a feeling, though, it's going to be a greasy striking match to a decision.
Yeah, and this is also another fight that we can get away from. I think Muradov is in place just as a live underdog who could win, maybe get you around 10x. But Borralho, even when he has grappled, he hasn't scored well on DraftKings. I think 81 is the most we've seen him score so far. And that's not going to cut it when you're priced up here with all these other killers. So I don't hate getting away from it, but for me, it's going to be more so Borralho or pass. And as I said, he's my pick to win.
Yeah.
Next one on the card. We got two good grapplers here. Sean Brady minus 140 against Bilal Muhammad plus 120. I think this probably just comes down to who's able to get the takedown, spend time in top control, grind out minutes. Do you have a lean on who that might be, or do you see this fight going a different way?
That's correct. I think more specifically, this is a round 2 fight. It's what's going to happen in round 2. I'm a big Sean Brady fan. I think I even recently got one of his shirts, not because I try to do that or anything, like I try to keep unbiased, but it was a really cool shirt. But that being said, even though I bought the Sean Brady shirt, I'm taking the Bilal Muhammad pick. This was the fight I was actually tape studying right before I got on here with you, Kyle, and it is really interesting. For one, the short answer is I could play my pick of Bilal Muhammad simply because he opened as the favorite. Now he opened as too wide of a favorite. I don't agree with that line. Props to y'all playing the Brady at plus money at that opener. I don't disagree with that. I probably would have done the same. But to see him get it completely flipped, and now he's dog money. He's the guy out there early. Believe me, I'm the last guy to like get on my knees with everybody else, seemingly, and start, performing fellatio on Khabib Nurmagomedov. But that does mean something that he's out there training with Khabib Nurmagomedov for this stylistic matchup. That is obviously a great, probably one of the greatest people you could, for a guy that likes that meta of the back takedowns against the cage like Sean Brady. So I think Sean Brady's going to get round 1. It's can he get round 2? I know it sounds crazy, but I'll come clean. I faded Brady against Court McGee back in the day. So if I'm not going to take a shot or at least pick Belal, who is proven to fight smart and can come on strong late, then what am I doing here? That being said, it's going to come down to that round 2. I think Belal wins round 3. But does he make Brady work hard enough in round 2? And does he avoid the smothering control to land enough strikes to sway the decision in round 2 to be the more damaging fighter? Even if he does give up 2 minutes or so, maybe even half the round, is he able to keep fighting and do enough damage before, during, and or after those grappling stanzas? So it's going to be tight. I still haven't laid money yet. If I do, it might just be a 1-unit shot on Belal plus money. But as far as fantasy goes, I am really curious to hear your take on this, because the opposite side that I'm picking is the more potent takedown side.
Yeah, I think just on fantasy, it is in play on both sides, because this is the mid-range fight of the week. We got Brady at 8,200 and Muhammad at 8K. And if either one of them is able to have, 2 or 3 rounds of grappling success, then they have a good chance of paying that off. And if they have 3 rounds of grappling success, they can score 100 points in a decision. So we just love grapplers on DraftKings, especially if you're going to rack up 5 to 10 takedowns in the fight. That's great for us. And this one, I don't know who the better wrestler is, who's going to be the guy having success there. But to me, it's really just a 50-50 fight. And I always would rather have the underdog ticket in that case. And I do think that Muhammad has the striking as well. We saw Chiesa have a little success in the striking against Brady. And we also saw Nordiev, a kickboxer, have success on top of Brady. So those left a little bad taste in my mouth, but that's really the only 2 bad things about Brady. He's the full package. He's a really good striker. He's a good grappler. But so is Muhammad. I think he's got the same skills in this one. So I would rather just take the underdog. With that $8,200 and 8K, I'm just going to play them both. And I would say if I'm hand building a Sean Brady lineup, I'll probably end up just duplicating that lineup and throwing Belal in there, just making the pussy move, throwing one lineup away, but hoping to hit the nuts in the other one. So that's more my play when I don't have a lean on these mid-range priced fights. But ideally, if I'm hand building, I'd have Belal in there with 0 left over, so I don't have to worry about that FOMO of being able to afford Brady. But I'll just let the optimizer kind of control this one. But my preferred play is Belal Muhammad, since I'm picking him to win as an underdog.
Last question on that fight. Let me just ask you this. You say you pick Brady, or for example, he loses. Maybe it makes a difference if he loses by decision or if he loses by a 3rd round submission because he's gassed. But I wonder, can he still pay off a price tag if he gets enough takedowns with the fantasy game? Because the reason why I asked is because the path to Belal winning is giving up about, literally 8 or 10 takedowns. Because the wrestling question is, Belal, as the more credentialed wrestler, he actually grew up wrestling. Whereas, but Brady is going to be the better MMA wrestler offensively while he has the gas. But Belal, I think his defense is good enough and his scrambling is good enough to where he won't get submitted. And I got to imagine that's going to be part of the plan to make Brady tired. It's one of those fights where you let the back taker almost get the body triangle, gas his legs out, right? And then come round 2, it's all you, baby. So I'm wondering, in a loss, are there scenarios like that, Kyle, where a loser can still pay off his ticket?
Yeah, I would say there are. I didn't really think of this as that case, but if he landed 8 to 10 takedowns and found a way to lose the fight, then yeah, he would be in play to still score over 10x that price. And that is sometimes what puts a very low on stack in the 200K lineup. I don't think I would do that personally,
right?
Just because, we've seen Muhammad in 16 UFC fights, and he's only been taken down 3 times by 3 different guys. Never been taken down more than once in a fight. I know this will be his biggest test. Right. Wrestling wise, but I would just be surprised to see him get taken down that much and then still win the fight. That would be even more shocking to me, I think. So I wouldn't be stacking it personally, but we have seen, I'd say the cases where we see the stack work are more the Gaethje and Poirier type fights where you're going out there and you're landing 200 plus strikes in a loss. And you're still scoring well in a 5-round decision, something like that. That's when I'm looking to stack these non-5-round fights. So I'll be passing on the stack in this one.
Cool. Thanks for the info on that. Appreciate that.
Yeah, good question. All right, next one on the card, we have Manon Fiorot -200 against Caitlin Chookagian +170. It's probably a fight that I mostly get away from, but I am picking Fiorot to win. I just think she's the better, more powerful striker. And she started out as purely a striker, had issues in the wrestling department, but it looks like she's fixed that to me. Honestly, I don't know that she's not the better wrestler in this matchup, but we have seen Chookagian go out there and dominate the bad Shevchenko. And that just kind of gave me like who the hell is this lady? I don't even know what to expect with her. So I would think that that's her best game plan here, is to try and go out there and wrestle heavy, get on top of Fiorot. If she can do that, then she can score well. But with Chookagian, she's just not landing enough strikes to score well in decisions. She's mostly, yelling, having the judges think that she's hitting these strikes, but that doesn't count on DraftKings. That only counts if you get a close decision. And I would rather target those 100-point ceilings that I mentioned earlier. So Chookagian will probably be a full fade for me. And then with Fiorot, I don't know that she has 100-plus point upside, so I might just get away from her also. But she has scored well in the past, so I'm not against using her, and she is my pick to win this fight. But how do you see this one going down, Dan?
Yeah, I'll try to keep this short. This is definitely an avoid for me, although I'll give you one gambling dart that I am looking at. Basically, I'm going to be picking Fiorot. I haven't fully looked into this, full disclosure, so I may, sway my pick. So check my, main card, quick picks and prognostications articles that go up because this is on the main card. I don't know why it's opening the main card when you have 135ers and 155ers right above it. That would be perfect for it, for the card flow. But needless to say, here's the one thing, though. If Fiorot does lose a lot of prospect losses, it feels like hers is coming. It all comes in MMA, right? We've seen this a billion times, right? Big Marley, we've been watching this game enough. And particularly prospect losses, regardless of gender, particularly with the ladies, it comes by submission. And Fiorot almost invites this, which was a worry for me in her fight with, I think, Mayra Buena Silva and some others, where she will just shoot reactive takedowns, almost like it's like a habit that's drilled into her. Or maybe if she catches herself out of position, she will shoot these takedowns like clockwork. And I'm telling you, folks, mark my words, she is going to pay for that. And Chookagian, I know she's not much of a finisher. And when she does turn on the grappling against the bad Shevchenko, as Kyle said, it was more of like her initiating, right? Which she could do here. That isn't out of the question. But she also has a very active guard. It's active enough where, it's enough to scare girls away and allow them to get up, even like the Liz Carmouches of the world who won that fight and is good on top. But, if you look, Caitlin Chookagian is really active. I don't know if she's still a brown belt. She's been a brown belt forever. I got to imagine she's a black belt now, working with some really good people. So I'm probably going to pick Fiorot, but I'm looking at plus 1,800 over by submission. They're listed at Chookagian, and I can't help but like throw a couple bucks that I won't notice that's missing, whether it's gone or not on something like that. I'm not telling you to do that, folks. I'm just saying that is the one thing that interests me in a fight that I otherwise have no interest in, and I'm picking the favorite.
Yeah, this is not financial advice, but seeing that plus 2,600 on FanDuel might have me throwing a little bit something on that too. But that would be my hedge. If she does get an early submission, that probably puts her on the optimal lineup at low ownership. But I would rather just take that plus 2,600 rather than throw, like a $25 lineup and need to get her to get that plus my other 5 fighters to do something.
Yes,
so
yes.
That's a good hedge. I like that, but I'll pick Fiorot to get a decision win there personally. All right, next one on the card we have. I'm excited about this one. We got Mateusz Gamrot -195 against Beneil Dariush +165. This is one where I wanted to hear your breakdown because I think it's two really good grapplers, more so on the wrestling from Gamrot and the grappling from Dariush. But Dariush has been racking up takedowns as well. So how do you see this fight going down? Do you have a strong lean either way?
This is tough. I don't disagree with who the favorite is, nor am I surprised to see a little bit of money coming in on Gamrot. Again, recency bias, you could be like, oh, I like Dariush more, and, Gamrot didn't win. Tsarukyan won his last fight. And regardless if I agree with you on the scorecards, it was a close fight, and we can't lose track of the sight that Gamrot is a really talented fighter who has been making improvements, and he's a dog. He is a dog. He is a more active fighter. I think his pace is going to do him really well here. But again, this is another fight for slightly different reasons, much more volatile. But another round 2 fight. I think this is going to come down to round 2. Can either guy get a finish in round 1? Sure. Dariush's chin's been touched, and Gamrot, we've seen him against the Holzman fight when he switches to southpaw. But that's the interesting thing. He's facing another southpaw, and the fights that I want to go back to watch, that I didn't have time to go back to watch before this, and I don't know how relevant they will be, but it's the only other UFC level southpaw that Gamrot faces. Of course, you got to go over to his regional records, and that is, of course, Norman Park, who, for those of you more older school UFC fans, remember him. He, of course, fought from a southpaw stance too. A lot of their fights were striking, so I want to go refresh myself on this one before fully committing. But for me, this feels like the favorite is in the right spot, but I am not going to lie. I am really tempted to take a flyer on Dariush here. I'm not saying I am. I'm not saying I'm even going to pick him, folks. I'm saying that is the direction I'm looking at while breaking down this fight right now, especially because it's 3 rounds. Dariush's cardio, I know, has been questionable, but he has almost improved it. Don't let the gray hairs fool you. He's really improved it, and he really takes pride in trying to work guys. And in 3 rounds, I don't think that's a problem. I think his cardio in 5 rounds will be a problem, but this is a 3-rounder, so this could be the perfect spot for him to upset. That's what I'm going to look for. I apologize for not giving you a more cement analysis and pick here, but I don't disagree with the favorite, but I'm looking toward the direction of the dog. Will I get there? I'm not sure yet. From a draft, from the fantasy perspective, of course, it's it's interesting. I'm real curious to hear your perspective there, because I do think that Gamrot could flip the script here and go takedown heavy. But if he wanted to strike with Dariush, we really shouldn't be surprised if he holds off on the takedowns and just uses the big cage to move and work his lateral movement, which Gamrot does.
Yeah, I'm actually siding with the underdog here as well. I would agree that Gamrot should be the favorite, just not by this much. So when I was handicapping the fight, Dariush was the value side, so I just ended up picking him as my play here. I think on DraftKings, we're going to need, the winner, whoever it is, just to go out there and have their grappling success, land 4+ takedowns in this fight, and then they can score well, end up on the optimal lineup. But if the wrestling ends up canceling out and we're stuck with the striking match, then it probably doesn't even matter who wins. I don't think that they're going to score well, but Dariush is cheaper, so I prefer him there as well. So Dariush is going to be my preferred play. I don't think we have to target this fight, but at the same time, I think that could burn us, because either one of these guys could go out there, rack up takedown, score 100 points. So I do want exposure to it. I want exposure to both sides. Also, I want some Gamrot exposure. But my preferred play, if I was making just one lineup, I'd rather have Dariush in that lineup. All right, next one on the card. We got one of everyone's favorite fights. Petr Yan -265 against Sean O'Malley +225. This is a striker's delight here, basically. I do think Yan would be smart to mix in takedowns here. We saw him get 7 takedowns against Aljamain Sterling, and it should be much easier to get a guy like O'Malley down. So he could go that route, but for O'Malley, I think it's just going to be all the striking. And for him, he should come out of the gates hot, because Yan can be a slow starter, and O'Malley is flashy and dangerous. So I do think O'Malley's in play for the knockout, but I have a hard time seeing him win any other way other than knockout in this one personally. And I think at this point, the value is on Petr Yan at -265. But how do you see this one going down?
Yeah, man. Great analysis. I think everyone's on the same page where whether you like O'Malley or not, he's going to be live in round 1, because Yan starts slow. He collects info, however you want to characterize it. That is a round where he always, except last time, which we'll get to and parlay that in the future analysis here, except last time, right, where he fought very emotional, started fast, headhunted way more than he should have, and didn't go for any takedowns, right, despite dominating that portion of the fight with Sterling. So I always look for little overcorrections, and I think the market is already ahead of it, because I was hoping everyone was going to be on the hype where it's either O'Malley hype or O'Malley's getting finished hype. But prices are dictating that Yan is probably going to win by decision more often than he finishes him, which I don't like that, because that's what I was thinking too. I think that Yan, whether he's fighting safe or stupid, I think that this fight can go to a decision. It's more of O'Malley's durability, not even so much his chin. It's just him falling apart. I say this with guys who cut way too much weight at 135. We see it all the time. It catches up. It catches up to you if you're trying to be one of those tall dudes. So for that reason, I just have a hard time backing O'Malley, even though I'm a defender of his skills. The guy does have legitimate striking skills, folks. But I too like Jan by decision, which makes me hesitant on playing him because you're only getting plus 100. And from a fantasy perspective, I imagine you're still paying a decent price for Jan in comparison to some, and you're not maybe as guaranteed for the finish as much as I like, in my opinion.
Yeah, I would agree with that. I mean, 9,300 definitely doesn't make Jan a must play at all, but I think he has multiple paths to pay that off. So I do like Jan. He's my preferred play of the two. But at 6,900, if O'Malley does come through, he only scores well when he wins. It's usually 100 plus points. His only score that was not a good score was where he took the third round off against Sukumtat, where he had to lay on his back that whole round. But I'm sure he would have scored much better if he could fought that round. Also, this is by far his toughest test, so I don't really see that same ceiling here. But first round knockout is always in play for Sean O'Malley, so I will keep him in my player pool. And I'm not against using him in a hand build. If I need to go down to 6,900, I'm okay with it, to be honest with you. But my preferred play in all formats is going to be Jan here. Looking forward to this fight. And if O'Malley wins, he's the real fucking deal for sure. But this is a stiff test, and I think it's a little bit too tough for him to pass at this moment. At the same time, if he loses to Peter Yan, I don't think we should write him off. That's not too bad of a loss.
Yep, agree.
All right, next one on the card, we got co-main event, Aljamain Sterling minus 175 against TJ Dillashaw plus 150. Man, I don't know on this one. This is, my hardest fight on the card, one of the hardest for DraftKings, because I want to be close to all in on this fight, but I don't have a real preferred play, which just leans me to the underdog. If I want the fight in there, I'd rather just save the money and go with him. So I'm picking TJ here, but I don't have a very strong feeling about that. It's more so that I like his striking more. I think he's the better wrestler, but Sterling has the grappling edge. And if he gets on top of Dillashaw, I think Dillashaw could be in trouble, where I don't think it's the same thing if Dillashaw gets on top of Sterling. I just think the line should be a little bit closer to 50-50. So I sided with the underdog in this one, but how do you see it going down?
I agree with the line that should be closer to 50-50. It opened wider, which kind of surprised me. Hearing a lot of people I respect, really confident on Sterling's side, and I get it. But I do wonder, I'm like, is that because he proved a lot of us wrong with that Jan fight, with that second time around? I picked him to beat Sandhagen. I picked him to beat Jan the first time. Of course, I did not pick him to beat him the second time after the information that we were privy to. It was hard to confidently pick Sterling. I really like Sterling. I really do. I came in expecting to pick him here, Kyle. I really did. But I left. That's why I always say it's good to run the analysis. This is a fight where I can assure you folks I did my full due diligence on as I do for the title fights and the big fights. And I left my analysis headed the other direction. That's right. I too am on TJ Dillashaw here. I haven't played him. I may, if I do, it may just be a money line play. Because I feel like it's a competitive decision either way. I was going to pick Sterling in a competitive decision. I didn't see him getting the submission like everybody thought. And when I looked into the tape further, I was reminded as to why. Is because Dillashaw is really good at not giving his back. He's really good at wrestling. It's something he is still shown to do. It's something he's still shown to do when hurt. Even, his only late career sample we really have. Legitimate one is not even the Cejudo fight, right? It is that Corey Sandhagen fight. And even within that, you only get a real sense of his striking timing in the first round because he gets his knee popped as someone who just got their knee popped at the end of the first round, right? So it's a real limited size we're judging on, right? But we've seen it before. These older fighters, even at 135, from Guido Canetti to all the way everybody ranked above him, even at these lower weight classes, we've been reminded that we can't be writing these dudes off because of their age necessarily. And Dillashaw, say what you will, even after the EPO affair, in his last fight and whatnot, you look at it, winning, losing, whether you think he's winning or losing, whether he's hurt, whether he looks tired, whether he's cut, this dude does anything and everything to win. He has competitive spirit. He is a dude that will fight for your money. I haven't played him. I'm not telling you to play him. It sounds like I'm talking, I'm trying to sell you on something here. I'm not. I'm just saying, like, this is what I'm reminded of every time I go back and watch this guy's tape. That's why I picked him to win by decision. against Sandhagen. I'm not saying that's not a controversial decision. I'm just saying that's the reason why I picked him to do that, because this guy will fight through it. And if you look at it, stats don't tell the story on everything. I'm one of the biggest person when it comes to that. But when you look at their control time and what they give up, there's a reason why nobody gets to Dillashaw's back. The guy's an incredible scrambler. He is a wrestler, and wrestlers tend to turtle to their base, which means they inherently are at risk of giving their back. But I went through and watched all the takedown, not just takedowns, the very few, but the takedown attempts that people have attempted throughout Dillashaw's entire career. And he only goes to that maybe under a third of the time. He actually has guard get-ups, underhook get-ups in the open, single leg swim get-ups. He knows how to use the cage, and he's got great balance even when he's getting his kicks caught, which is what's responsible for the majority of his takedowns. Something to watch out for. Both guys can counter kicks. But again, who's getting to who's back? Like, no one's even controlling Dillashaw, much less getting to his back. Whereas Sterling, people can get to his back. People can out wrestle him. He will relinquish guard. Now, those fights where he's done that, he's ironically come back to win, whether it was Toquinho Mendez, Cody Stamen, or other fights, right? Like he's won these fights more often than not. But if we're asking who is giving those back positions that everybody's so confident Sterling's going to win from, which he could, and I'll be happy for Sterling, but I don't get the confidence, because if anybody's giving that position, it's Sterling. He's got that funk style, kind of like Sandhagen, which is why another reason why I picked Dillashaw over Sandhagen is because Sandhagen will give his back. Now, Sandhagen doesn't have the wrestling funk to support his jiu-jitsu game like Sterling does, right? Which is why I picked Sterling over Sandhagen, if you're following me here. But Dillashaw does. Dillashaw has that wrestling to capitalize. He can follow the back well. And I think that's going to be, a very problematic. And on the feet, I'm being long-winded here. I apologize. I'm rounding the corner now. I think it's going to come down to leg kicks. Dominic Cruz is the only person to get the most control time on Dillashaw. You know how long that was? 33 seconds. And I mentioned Dominic Cruz because I feel like that game plan, it's a very realistic game plan. And I feel like it is the perfect game plan for this fight. Leg kicks, and corralling head kicks. Even the aforementioned Cody Stamen almost hit Aljo with a corralling head kick. They were calling for it with Cruz. Dwayne Ludwig wasn't wrong. We had to wait for Marlon and Vera to see that the corralling head kick they were going for, that was the right call. They were just a little too early with it, right? Cruz had a little too much in the tank. I think it goes perfect for this fight. Aljo's facing a kicker who can wrestle. I think this is really bad. The official pick's going to be Dillashaw by decision, so if I play him, it'll be money line. But the reason why I wouldn't play Dillashaw by decision is because I feel like we could see a leg kick TKO in rounds 4 or 5. So if I'm trying to get cute, maybe I sprinkle in rounds 4 or 5 on TJ in addition to a money line play, or I pick TJ. Maybe I don't have the cojones to play the money line. Maybe I just sprinkle on rounds 4 and 5 and let the best man win. From a fantasy perspective, interested to hear your take on it, but yeah, I got Dillashaw here too.
I like it. Yeah, that makes me like Dillashaw even more. And I would say, yeah, money line's the way to do it. I mean, I think there's already value there at plus 150, so no chance in just taking the decision to get a better line. I would just take the value where I can find it.
Yep.
On fantasy, on DraftKings, man, it's just almost an all-in fight for me. With my hand builds, I want to target this fight in every hand build I make. And with my 150, I'd probably still want, 80% of this total fight. I don't want all 80% Dillashaw, so I definitely want Sterling exposure. But either one of these guys, 8,500 for Sterling, 7,700 for Dillashaw, with 5 rounds to work with, they can pay that off and they can get 100+ points here. So just an all-in fight to target. If you guys are against us and you're on Sterling, get your leverage on Sterling, but get some exposure to Dillashaw. I'll be the other way, where I'll probably have my leverage on Dillashaw and maybe match the field on Sterling. But looking forward to this fight. Second favorite fight on DraftKings. Right behind this one, the main event, the all-in fight for me. We got Islam Makhachev minus 190 against Charles Oliveira plus 160. On DraftKings, they're priced very fair at 8,400 and 7,800. I just don't really see an outcome where the winner doesn't pay that off. So I think this is a 100% all-in fight for me. I can make some devil's advocate cases to not use it if you really want it, but I'm just not going to do that. I'm going to lock this fight into every lineup I build, because the winner has not only 100+ potential, but 120+ potential in this one. So I will be all in. I am a Charles Oliveira stan. I don't know that I've ever picked against Charles Oliveira, so I'm not going to start now. I think he finishes Islam here. But if he does not finish Islam can go out there, rack up 10 to 15 takedowns throughout this fight, score 150 points in a decision. And he's the best wrestler out there. I think he will have success wrestling. I just don't know how he looks on the ground against the best submission grappler in the UFC. And I think Oliveira has a big edge on the feet. And at the same time, with Islam getting takedowns, like, I'm not that worried about Oliveira off his back. But if Oliveira gets Islam down, I would worry about Islam in this matchup. So I think the value is on Oliveira. I think it's closer to a 50-50 fight. And I'm going to have my leverage on Oliveira for sure. And more so because I think Islam will be the more popular fighter here. And it's just going to be hard to match the field on him if he's going to be 50 to 60% on. So I will have leverage on Oliveira. But whatever lineup I don't have Oliveira in, Islam will be there. But how do you see this fight going down? And are you on my boy DuBronx?
Man, I picked against DuBronx. Last time I bet against him was I bet Paul Felder. So at least I have that. That was the last time I bet against him. But that doesn't mean I've been wrong on the pick. I picked against him against Michael Chandler. There's a bit of bias there. I've got some history with Chandler, and even DuBronx stands. That was the one fight they were really worried about. Been on him, and he's been paying for a lot of my goodies since because I went big on him in the next three. And to my credit, not just overcorrecting the steering wheel, I really feel like I've gotten more in touch with his game. And I'm not one to give myself pats on the back, but I went back to read my Gaethje and Oliveira analysis, and it was kind of sickening. And now I'm hearing my analysis talking points of, they couldn't fall him to the ground. That's why they lost. And now everybody's finally picking up on that. But that's the thing, is that Makhachev, to your point, Kyle, he can fall him to the ground. And I think win or lose, he can score, and probably will score a decent amount of takedowns for however long the fight is going. So I don't hate that, man. When everybody was getting high on Khabib, I was a Makhachev guy going, I don't think he's athletic as Khabib. Don't get me wrong, but I do think he's more technical. And now we've even heard people from his own camp come around and give that much. So I was called crazy for that because, again, you can't say anything negative about Khabib, even if all you're doing is praising people in his camp because his fans are so nuts. They go at you. But this guy is really good. So I don't want to get that loss. I am not discounting Makhachev, but here's something that I've been so excited to share all week, and I'm going to share it first right here on your show with you, Kyle. I don't get FOMO that much because I've been doing this forever, and that's not my gear. I don't need to be first to market, especially in this day and age of canceled fights. I just want to be right as possible. And B, as someone who's getting ready for their own fight, like it's much easier to just worry about your own stuff. But I'm not gonna lie. This is a fight where I'm all giddy. Like I wanted to share this with somebody, and this is the first place I get to share it. And I first picked up this piece of analysis when I was studying the Michael Chandler Oliveira fight, where if you go and you see that collage I post of all of Oliveira's front choke finishes, whether it's guillotines, darces, anacondas, and all the position, you go and watch it. Not 90%, not 99%, 110% of the time, he is feeding to his left. Even in the Gaethje fight, I talked about that in the clinch warfare, which is going to be something to watch out for here. He feeds to his left, okay? Chandler didn't really have to worry about that because he didn't really shoot with his head to that side. Do you know who shoots with his head religiously to that side, Kyle? Do you know who, when in clinches, sags his head religiously to that side? Oliveira is one of those few guys where I think he's a left-handed orthodox fighter, which makes sense because most gyms try to train you to orthodox because they hate southpaws like me, which maybe is the reason why his choking arm is quietly his left, DuBronx, even though he's right-handed. But Makhachev is a southpaw, but he is a real southpaw. This guy is a real left-hander because when he's in the clinch, his place of comfort, Kyle, he's always reaping with the left leg, literally 9 times out of 10. And 9 times out of 10, at least 9 times out of 10, that underhook, probably 9.5 times out of 10, that underhook is on the left side. Now, if you're reaping on your left side, if you're underhooking on your left side, where is your head naturally sagging to? It is sagging to your right, or Charles Oliveira's left. That's right, the choking side. Does this mean he's going to win? No. Does this mean he's going to win by submission? No, it doesn't. Anything can happen. It's a fight. Makhachev's talented. But I do know that even if I were to present that information to Khabib, who I believe is going to be arguably a better coach than he is a fighter. I know they're going to get on me for saying that when ultimately all I'm doing is still complimenting the guy, folks. He's a really good coach though, by the way. I believe I could present this information to his camp But you know what? I'd still be confident in my pick and play on Oliveira money line. 2.5 units plus 168, may add more, want to do 3, and just 1 unit straight on by submission at plus 300, because muscle memory is an MFer, Kyle. Muscle memory is an MFer. I know you got your BMF wallet, and you know what else is an MFer? Muscle memory. When you get hit, when you get rocked, when you're under duress, when you're stressed, when you're in a big live crowd like they're going to be in, where do you go? You go to your comfort. And where is these guys' comforts? Wrestling and submissions. And there is a perfect connecting puzzle piece there. Does it mean it's going to happen? No, you don't have to follow me off this cliff. Make your own decisions. You're all adults out there. But when I see that, oh boy, it was like that Leo DiCaprio moment from Once Upon a Time in Hollywood. I was watching tape. I was like, right there. And I went through all of Makhachev's tape, but I couldn't find a time where he doesn't put his head off to the right side. Now, there are foot trips where he doesn't have to expose himself as much, but Oliveira's good in the clinch too. And lastly, but not leastly, the leg entanglements. Not too long ago, he went against Thiago Moises, and Islam Makhachev looked lost. Even the commentary mentioned it. He was stuck for a good minute at the end of one of the rounds in a leg lock. He was looking to his corner, Khabib. He looked really flustered and befuddled. Well, what does Oliveira do to the wrestlers that he faces as of late, like Kevin Lee, who's a good wrestler with good jiu-jitsu? He does leg entanglements through leg locks to stifle their game. So even if he does get on top, he will score you your fantasy points, but I don't know if he's going to get much meaningful work done, even if he gets past the clinch and past the chokes and past the striking. Give me Dubronx. Sorry for the long-winded explanation.
No, I loved it. And that's the type of in-depth stuff. Like I wouldn't have picked that up. So I love to hear that. I was already on Dubronx, but I feel even better about it now. I think you should hit that plus 160 before it goes down like these other books. Go Dubronx. I think he finishes them as well. But either way, yeah, just load up on this fight on DraftKings. It's the best fight to target, and I cannot wait for it. But I realized as we were talking, I forgot to tell you to give you a heads up that at the end of each card, we pick a kill shot, which is somebody we think might go overlooked on DraftKings. So I'll just say take out the main and the co-main event, and any one of those fighters will work as a kill shot, and I'll think of one first to give you a little bit of time. And on this card, I will take my kill shot to be... I'll go AJ Dobson. I think his best path to victory is a first-round knockout. If you get a first-round knockout at 7,100, you're breaking the slate. So I'll target that ceiling, and I'll go overweight on AJ Dobson. I'll pick him as my kill shot for this card. Do you have anyone in mind, Dan?
Man, I had a feeling you're going to go AJ Dobson because that is a good kill shot, and I completely agree with that. Unfortunately, mine are going to be in fights where I'm actually leaning toward the favorite, but I feel like, again, if you're talking about quiet, not just ownership or being a live dog, but a kill shot to actually make a statement, and those statements tend to score big, right? If we're talking about finishes here. Yeah. Even though I'm picking Fiorot, that Chookagian by submission, I'm sorry, I can't get my head out of that. But honestly, the kill shot I think is going to come in the Lucas Almeida and Tukhugov fight. Again, I'm leaning toward the favorite there again. I know a bit wishy-washy. I wish I could give you guys more on that. But there's no denying that there's a high potency for a finish. And even people who do make the Tukhugov Nurmagomedov connection that he's part of that camp, he's not a popular guy. It's not going to be a popular fight that's getting a lot of action or ownership, I imagine. So that could be some gold there if you can find an angle between those two.
I like it. Yeah, neither side of that fight will be too highly owned. So either side works as a kill shot, in my opinion. And this is a great card to pick a favorite as a kill shot because a lot of the ownership will go to these title fights and Makayev. So it's a little bit easier, I think. I think when I do ownership, I just think it'll come together a little easier than it does most weeks. But just think of ways you can get different, especially if you are targeting those main event fights. You don't want to go all chalk. You don't want to tie with 100 other people, 1,000 other people, even if you are coming in first place. So you want to take that 200K down solo. So think of a way to get different. Put your kill shots down in the comments. Give us a like. Subscribe if you haven't done so already. But thank you very much for coming on the show, Dan. If you have anything you want to promote, man, the floor is yours.
Oh, no, man. It's just been awesome to have you on, man, or to be on your show. And I hope to have you on, I should say, my show, the Protect Your Neck podcast. You can follow me at Dan Tom MMA on Twitter for all my stuff there. But please like and subscribe and make sure you're supporting my man Kyle and his show. This guy has been at it. He is a well-respected member. This guy kills it. So please like, subscribe, and support my guy Kyle.
Thanks a lot, man. I appreciate that. And I think that you have DFS Army's own DFS Sniper on your Protect the Neck either this week or next week, something like that. I heard. So a little
We're
shout out for
representing.
you.
We're representing.
Yeah, so go DFS Army. But thanks again, man. I always love talking with you. Hopefully we get you back on again. But yeah, give me a heads up and I'll come on your show anytime. Good luck to you this weekend. Good luck to everybody listening. Go out there, win something. See you guys.
Nice.